The channel was gaining popularity. I would do videos on the careers of general managers, and I found them interesting, and they garnered a lot of attention. I've kind of gotten away from it, but Jason Botterill, it's worth taking a look at his short career in Buffalo. Now, there's two problems. One, I think 3 years is too short of a period of time for a general manager to necessarily turn around a team that's broken. But on the other hand, Buffalo last made the playoffs in 2011, so something has to give. You can't have endless patience when the fans don't. And I don't know how Dwayne feels today. By all means, Dwayne, comment below. For people wondering, Dwayne is a comment to or is a reference to a Buffalo Sabres fan that phoned in to a Buffalo Sabres show and let them know how frustrated he was as a Sabres fan. And he spoke for most Sabres fans. I'm going to say all, but I want to say all anyways, but I have to say most because there'll be some who go, I don't agree with Dwayne, he's wrong. Dwayne's kind of a jerk. But anyhow, he's hired May 11th of 2017 and he's fired today, June 16th of 2020. And again, if you're trying to remake a roster, I don't think that's enough time in today's NHL. Trades aren't as easy to make as they used to be. Drafting takes time before you see the fruits of your labors there. And it's an argument I've made about Jim Benning. Anytime that I've seen Canuck fans complaining Benning needs to go, I've said, no, just give it some time and it'll turn around. And it seems to be on that path in Vancouver, whereas Buffalo, things have stalled out. But again, he's only been there for 3 years, and it sounds like a long time. The problem is when you look at his trade history, it's not a great trade history when you look at who they stole and who they didn't. So, again, we're just doing noteworthy trades because I just wanted it to be on one board. I didn't feel the need for it to be 2 or 3 different boards. June 30th, 2017, he made his first notable trade as the GM of the team, acquiring Scandella and Pominville and a 2018 fourth-round pick for Ennis, Foligno, and a 2018 third. I see that as a saw-off. Scandella, decent enough for Buffalo. Now, Foligno has added definitely the grit to the bottom six Minnesota's enjoyed. Ennis, it wasn't a great run for him in Minnesota either, so, kind of a saw-off. That third, they upgraded their pick, did Minnesota. That's a bit of a loss, but again, they don't really lose that trade until later. Till what they did with Scandella. And that's where I think the loss comes in. But again, I don't know how you do that different. February 26th of 2018, they traded Evander Kane to San Jose. In return, they get back O'Regan, 2020 fourth round pick, and the number 29 pick, which ends up going to Anaheim. So, And again, Evander Kane, they wanted to get rid of him. They got rid of him. He's gone. And was that a great move? I don't know. You guys are going to have to let me know. Because again, for Kane, you do have baggage when you have Evander Kane in your team. Absolutely. And so I still understand why that went down. But again, it looks bad in hindsight, doesn't it? Because you don't get back enough value unless that number 1 draft pick becomes something great. And you can make the argument that it didn't. Now, June 27th, again of 2018, Connor Sherry and Matt Hunwick were added. Pittsburgh takes back a fourth-round pick in 2019. This was a cap move. And it honestly looked like a smart move for Buffalo at the time, because Sherry, potential 20-goal scorer, and Hunwick, well, Matt Hunwick, a decent enough depth defenseman who would then deal with injury problems. And then, of course, July 1st, this is the trade everybody points to. Everybody will say this is where Botterill loses his job right after he got it. Where Ryan O'Reilly went to the St. Louis Blues. O'Reilly had been very vocal about not wanting to lose anymore in Buffalo. And so they kind of accommodated him by moving him to St. Louis. In return, they get Sobotka, Berglund, Thompson, a 2019 first-round pick, which was used to draft Ryan Johnson, and a second-round pick in 2021. So there's a couple of things with this deal. A, yes, St. Louis wins the trade, but we don't know what Ryan Johnson's going to be yet, and that 2021 second, we don't know how that's going to work out for them either. They haven't traded it yet. So we'll circle back on the whole trading of draft picks thing in a bit here. But for Buffalo, there was no way to know that Sobotka was going to be a bomb in Buffalo. Berglund wasn't going to want to play. And there was no way to know that Thompson wasn't going to reach whatever ceiling that might have been envisioned for him by Jason Botterill. So that is the deal that overall looks like an absolute mess. We'll see if Ryan Johnson becomes a decent NHLer at some point and what that second rounder next year turns into. But at this point, yeah, St. Louis, very happy with that Stanley Cup ring. Thanks, Buffalo. August 2nd, he then acquires Jeff Skinner. And this trade was a steal. And Carolina said, well, we didn't want to pay him what he wanted, so we got rid of him. And all they got back was Cliff Pooh, 2019 second, which they used to draft a goaltender, Kochetkov. And we'll see whether or not he ends up being an NHL level goaltender, a 2020 third and a 2020 sixth. So as lopsided as that trade may have looked at the time, and it did, and it still kind of does. Again, they drafted a goalie in the second round last year. We'll see what happens with him. They've got a third rounder this year. And this was one of those times where Buffalo's trading away draft picks to pick up players to try to get better right away. Now, Skinner had an excellent first year in Buffalo. But is his contract worth it? We'll come back with contracts in a bit here. So February 24th of 2019, they acquired Montour. They traded Gooley and the 2019 first that they had acquired from San Jose, which was then used to acquire Tracy. He was drafted in the first round left winger by the Anaheim Ducks in 2019. So it becomes Kane for O'Regan, a 2024th, and Brandon Montour. That's still a trade that favors San Jose. So that's an issue right there. June 28th, they rolled the dice on this one. And you know what? I give Botterill a pass. I do. Colin Miller was acquired from Vegas for a 2021 second and a 2022 fifth. I got what he was trying to do here. He was trying to add that depth to the blue line. Miller was a decent enough offensive blue liner his first year in Vegas. Decent enough in Boston as well. The potential was there, and it was a terrible fit in Buffalo, or something happened and he just fell off the rails. But, you know, the Miller trade, it was one of those ones where he's trading futures for somebody to help them right now. This is a problem. Because then on July 1st, they acquired Jimmy Vesey for a 2021 third. So I'm going to circle back on Benning now. Benning does tend to trade draft picks, and it drives Canuck fans insane. And the 50-year Buffalo Sabres, same amount of time as Vancouver represent. The Buffalo Sabres, Botterill's been doing the same thing, trading draft picks like they're nothing, like they grow on trees. And VC was not great that year in Buffalo that just finished. Where they still weren't a playoff team. So was VC worth losing a third? I would argue no. And I would argue no because they've given away a number of draft picks in each draft. July 9th, this is a trade I'm going to go ahead and say was a great one for Buffalo. Yoki Haryu's picked up from Chicago for Alex Nylander. And Nylander I don't think was ever going to develop in Buffalo. I think that was just a situation where he just had to go. And so Yoki Haryu, pretty darn decent defenseman, top four upside. I like that deal a lot for Buffalo. And then January 2nd, 2020, they acquired a fourth for Scandella. They then, the same day, move a fourth to Calgary for Frolik. So they turned Scandella into Frolik, and it's a fourth round pick that helps make that happen. Again, trying to shore up the team with the idea of, hey, we could make the playoffs. Which at the time we all went, what are they doing this for? Maybe they knew something we didn't. Because, of course, they weren't that far behind Montreal for that play-in spot that we didn't even know was a thing back then. Now, February 24th, of course, they acquire Wayne Simmons for a 2021 fifth. So, minor risk. But again, when you're just throwing draft pick after draft pick after draft pick, it does start to add up. And then on the deadline as well, they pick up Dominic Cahoon for Sherry and Rodriguez. And Evan Rodriguez was not fitting into the Buffalo lineup. I like Cahoon in Buffalo. I think that's a solid pickup. So when you look at the overall trades, if you're going to say trades got him fired, then the trades he made right after he was hired in 2018, not too long after he's hired, those are the ones that probably got him fired in 2020. Now, there's a lot of contracts that are due this summer if you're Buffalo. This fall, I guess, depending on when we get free agency. $34.5 million in cap space. And you're going to hear that a lot, but they have a lot of guys to sign. Reinhart, restricted free agent, of course. Vesey, Gergensons, Larson, Cahoon. Olofsson, also a restricted free agent. I believe Cahoon is as well. Lazar's a restricted free agent. Montour. Pilot, who, of course, has decided to go to the KHL. Ullmark, also restricted free agent, but that's a lot of guys. It's a lot of players that have to get signed. And then you've got your LTIR players who are all due. Sobotka, he's not coming back. Hunwick's not coming back either. And then there's Tage Thompson, who's a restricted free agent this summer. So there's a lot of names out there. There's a lot of guys who may or may not be due for a raise. And it's going to be up to the next GM to decide how many dollars these guys get thrown at them. Reinhardt's the big one to me. What is Reinhardt worth right now? And do you invest for who he is right now, or do you invest for who he might be 2 or 3 years from now? Do you give him maybe a little bit more money because you think someday he's going to do kind of what Nathan MacKinnon did? He's not going to be Nathan MacKinnon exactly, but you just never know, right? Now, with contracts, is that the Achilles heel for Botterill, or is it the trades? Because in contracts, Eichel got 8 years and $80 million. You can't lose Eichel. You can't have Eichel sitting out. Eichel has to be happy. And there's definitely a lot of blame that goes around with Eichel when something happens like today, where they fire the general manager. Then it becomes, oh, Eichel's the GM now. Skinner, 8 years, $72 million. You know, the Skinner deal, was it too much money? Yes. Was it also important? Yeah. No, I understood why Botterill did it at the time. And it backfired. Skinner had a career year. Not this season, obviously, but the year before. And the optics of having a guy who just scored 40 leave your team and you get nothing in return, I think that was a little too much. So I think they sat down and they gave him too much money. $9 million a year is too much for Skinner. Eichel gets 10, Skinner gets 9. Skinner's not $1 million less in value than Eichel. I think if that deal was 7, maybe 7.5, I think it'd be a lot easier. Not only would it be easier to justify, but it would also be easier to get rid of if you're the general manager of the team right now. So, they also signed Johansson last summer, 2 years, $9 million overall. And Carter Hutton, 3 years, $8.25 million. But, again, you know, is Hutton a starter? And that's a question that I've had right from when they signed him. Is Carter Hutton a starter? I would say no. I'd say he's better as a backup. And Ullmark definitely took a step forward this year. And we'll see if Ullmark gets paid like a starter. Now, at the draft table, again, it's way too early to really make a decision on whether or not Botterill did really well. 2017, he drafts at 8. He drafts Casey Mittelstadt. They only had 6 picks that year. And that's been part of the problem. 2018, they had 6 picks. In 2019, they had 6 picks. When you're a rebuilding team, or when you're a team that's trying to stock up for the future, whether you're intending to make the playoffs or not, you need to have more picks than there are rounds. And again, the Vancouver thing comes up because Buffalo's consistently traded away draft picks. And some of them, you know, first, second, or third, those are highly coveted draft picks. And if you don't get better, like the JT Miller deal for Vancouver, if JT Miller bombs in Vancouver and they don't get better, that deal looks terrible. But in this case, Buffalo just didn't really get better. Now, Dahlin's drafted first overall in 2018. There's no question about Dahlin's talent and his ability to be one of the best defensemen in the league. Not in my eyes, anyways. 2019, they drafted Cousins. He hasn't even come up and played yet. We don't know how good he might be. And then they drafted Johnson at 31st. That was the draft pick they acquired from the St. Louis Blues. Which, of course, St. Louis fans will say, yeah, we'll lose the number 31 draft pick because it means we won the Stanley Cup. Fair point. Now, also in 2017, circling back to that, he drafted Luukkonen, goaltender, at 54th overall. And Luukkonen, from everything I've read and seen, looks like he's going to be an NHL-level goaltender. So, you know, not a miss at the draft yet, because we don't really know exactly where any of these drafts are gonna line up in terms of who else he may have drafted outside of the first round who may end up being a pretty good player. Now in 2017, yes, he passed on Nehas, Suzuki, Brandstrom, there are others, in order to get Mittelstadt. Mittelstadt had a good start to the season this year and then just fell right off the map And again, I don't know where you throw that blame. You can't blame the brand new coach. And it's something that Brian Burke always says, you get to hire one coach if you're a GM. So if there was any discussion that they've had over the last couple of weeks, I guess, where maybe he tried to say something about Ralph Krueger and ownership said he's not the problem. So maybe, I don't know. Now again, at the time he's hired, they'd just come off of a season where they were 33, 37, and 12 in 2016, 2017, and the season that we just had shortened, but has ended, 30, 31, and 8. So, mild improvement between those 3 years. And again, when you haven't made the playoffs since 2011, the pressure's on. And so for him as a general manager, I don't think he had enough time to rebuild the roster. But I can also say the O'Reilly deal wasn't great. The Skinner contract kind of sunk him a little bit. And then you've got all these contracts that are due this summer. If you don't believe in his vision for the team, this was probably the time to give him the boot. Say, sorry, you're not our guy. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and hey, there you go. The short GM career of Jason Botterill, and then the question becomes one of whether or not somebody else will hire him as a general manager. I'm going to go ahead and say somebody will hire him for business reasons. He'd done jobs with Pittsburgh before this, and I think, and then with Dallas, I believe as well. So I think somebody else will hire him. He'll have a numbers job somewhere in the NHL. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him from there. But for now, his GM time is done in Buffalo, and Kevin Adams is up. And he's going to hope that his board looks a little different than this if I'm talking about him in 3 years. And we're talking about an extension for him, not him being fired too. So thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.